Hey, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Just want to welcome you guys back to the Conversation 9-8 and thank you guys so much for your continued support and rocking with your boy. Very excited about another episode. Very excited about tonight. Very excited just about life in general, and I'm very appreciative of that. But I hope everybody's doing well. Hope all is well with everyone. Again, I'm sharing this with some people. Um, and once I get done sharing, make sure you share this with some folks, and we're gonna get on with it and get on. Get on going. But again, excited and happy to be back before you guys. Thoughts and prayers go out to all bereaved families. Uh, um, to the Gilbert family in Kansas, my thoughts and prayers to you. I heard the passing of Mother Gilbert. Very, 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 very sweet lady, genuine lady, and I'm truly excited about the celebration that they're going to have in her honor. Well, just uh, one of those pillars in the community, and the true definition of what they say a church mother. So I'm very um, saddened to hear about her passing, but also know that she was definitely loved and definitely appreciated. So I just wanted to just say that to send a shout out to that. We're gonna go ahead on and get on with tonight. Shout out to my son too. Shout out to Robert, man. Well, he celebrated his birthday on yesterday, and truly enjoyed spending some time with him, and looking forward to the continuing growth that I see in him, and him becoming a man and being the man that he is, and walking a life of principle, living a life of principle, and that's as a parent, that's all you really can ask. So just wanted to say all that, get all of that out the way, and man, we're gonna get right into it. Uh, um, Again, let me know where you're tuning in from. Definitely would like to know that. This is open to any and everybody. It's an open conversation, open dialogue. So if you guys want to come on in, hey, jump on in and let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion. But with all that being said, man, we're gonna go ahead on and get on with it. Well, tonight episode, looking forward to it. Um, and what we're gonna talk about tonight is something that's very, I feel that is very important. Um, and I think it's necessary to have that conversation. But being self-aware enough, right, to realize that your preference are yours and not others. And I think that is very critical and very key to understand, because many times what happens is people, we live a life, and listen, you only view life, or what you everybody has, they view life through their perspective, their lens, right? And we all have our own preferences, right? We all have things that we like, and we all have things how we like, we have things how we like them. We all have that. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to be self-aware enough to realize that just because I have a preference, that doesn't mean that it's other people. And being self-aware enough to realize that it I don't dictate what other people's preferences are. I don't control what their preferences are, or I can't make my preferences others. And a lot of us, we try to do that, and we fail miserably with doing that. We fail miserably with doing that, because one of the things about it is we like making. Uh, we all like to feel like, you know we all want people around us to um, be agreeable, and I think that's something that's critical, but something we have to look at, right? Um, you know, just because we want people to agree with us, or we like to be around people that are in agreement with us, even if they're in agreement with you, that still doesn't mean that your preferences are theirs. And we have to be careful and be self-aware enough to understand the fact that, hey, just because I desire something a certain way, or I have a preference about something, that doesn't mean that I got it's forced on other people around me, and especially those closest to you. You can have certain things. I mean, we all have those things, but a lot of times we feel like just because something is the way that we see it or how we grew up or the things we want it our way, that we want to force that on other people. And I would tell you that that is not a way to success, a recipe for success. That's a recipe for disaster. Because if you're not self-aware to realize that your way is not everybody, you're going to be the source of chaos in a lot of situations. You will be a source of chaos. You will be a source of this. You will be a source of chaos and dysfunction for other people. And it is what it is. Because I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but it is what it is. You will become a source of dysfunction in other people's lives if you yourself think that the world should revolve around you, your preferences, and how you want things. And the sad reality is we got many people that do that, that live like that way, that approach life that way. And a lot of them may be in condition because, hey, they grew up always getting their way, and or they find themselves in a position where they're in an authoritative position, or they may be financially shot calling, and they, everybody cater towards them. But just because you're probably in that position, that doesn't mean you don't make other people's lives around you like a living hell. All because you don't respect other people. You're not self-aware enough to respect other people's preferences. Or not only preferences, but you want your preference to be there for everybody else. And that is not realistic. We have to be self-aware to know that just because I want something or our things or I grew up a certain way, or things I have been always like I like them, that don't mean that that's for everybody else. I mean, that does not mean that. And I know it's hard for a lot of people, but it is what it is. It is what it is. One thing a lot of people don't realize is you hear a lot of people say, well, that's just how I was raised. Okay. But just because you was raised that way, that doesn't mean that it's okay for everybody else. And a lot of these conflicts happen in close relationships, especially if you coming into a long-term relationship and you were raised a certain way and that's how you prefer it, right? But you're not self-aware to realize, like, dang, that was just because of the environment that I came from. Now you approach and you look at somebody else based off of your preference as if how they operate is wrong, and it's not wrong. It's just how they operate. The way that you're doing it is based off of your experience, but just because it's your experience, that don't mean that it's true for everybody else. And so many people try to act as if their way is better, and that's why they're not self-aware to even realize that, hey, this is just my preference. It's not others, it's just my preference. And be okay with it. That's what it is. And that right there is what it is. And I know one of the things that's hard, one of the things that is very hard for a lot of people, and I know it is, but being self-aware enough to realize that your preference doesn't impact or control everybody else around you is simply being mature. And a lot of us lack the maturity level to be self-aware because we don't desire to consider other people, or we wasn't taught how to consider other people, or we're just so selfish that we don't want to consider others, and we expect everybody else around us to cater to us. We expect everybody else around us to not only cater to us, but to do what we want them to do. And we don't realize, like, dang, my preference is just my preference. I mean, no matter what it is, it's your preference. So why are you trying to put that on everybody else? And then we act as if the other people around us should just be willing to adjust and sacrifice and cater to us, but we ain't even being considerate enough to respect that they have their own preferences. And that's called maturity. That is what that is called. That's called maturity. That's being mature. And one thing that I realized and I've seen and I saw a lot, especially being in the military, but the problem some people have is that they only will view the world through their lens, and they get put in positions of authority, and they don't realize that how they are viewing it and approaching it, how it's impacting others around them, because they don't care, because they only want to operate in their comfort zone. And what I mean by their comfort zone, well, this is how I feel, or this is how I was raised. And a lot of times, just because you was raised a certain way, even though it probably didn't quote unquote cause any physical harm to you, that doesn't mean that it is conducive for you to operate in that environment outside of how you was raised. Because a lot of us, we were raised with dysfunctional ways from people that loved us and gave us the best that they had, but that still doesn't mean or justify the fact that that probably wasn't an efficient way of you being raised, or they probably raised you on the wrong principles with the right intent. And we got to be aware of that. That's called being self-aware. We got to be self-aware of that to be able to acknowledge that. But a lot of us, we just don't. We don't care. We get to a space that we don't care. And what we try to do is this. The funny thing is, we try hard. Many of us try hard to create environments where our preferences, or we try to create environments where it becomes comfortable for us. And we are so selfish in that approach. We don't even care. A lot of us, we don't care about our spouses, about our kids, by those around us, by our co-workers. And a lot of us with insecurities, what we seek is we seek to be in positions of authority to where we can quote unquote control the environment. And we just make our preferences and we just go about what we want. And we're dominant in that space, not even self-aware enough to realize what we're causing to those around us. And most of the time, it erodes those relationships with us around us, but we don't care because we just want it our way. Because we approach it saying, just because it's your preference, that doesn't mean that you're right. That's just how you like it. And your preference doesn't make it a universal truth. It just doesn't. Man, we got some comments. Hey, mama, how you doing? She said, good afternoon. Patricia, how you doing? Patricia Harris, hey, God be the glory. How you doing, Miss Shirley Shepherd? Good evening to you. My mama said, sometimes our dysfunctional environments becomes our normal and don't recognize it was dysfunctional. Man, you listen, mama, you hit the nail on the head with that, right? Just because you're comfortable with something, just because you grew up and it's comfortable with you, that doesn't mean that it wasn't dysfunctional. And now what you're doing is, because it's your normal, because you've become accustomed to it, and that's the environment that you operated in, you try to force that on everybody else to perpetuate that dysfunction while at the same time thinking that you're okay. And you're not even realizing, many don't even realize the impact or the damage that they're doing for those to those around them. Don't nobody want to be with you. Don't nobody want to be with you. Don't nobody want to be around you. Don't nobody want to work with you. Right? And you're a person that you probably lead on the job and everybody hates working with you. Yeah, you're good at your job, but because of you're dominated by trying to push your preferences and not being self-aware to realize, hey, my preference, it may not apply to everybody. I can still have my preferences and still be secure in myself, but I can respect others as well. I can respect others as well. And it boils down to maturity. Many of us, we just don't want to be mature enough to address those things. I mean, that's just really what it boils down to. And it's not saying nothing bad about anybody, but that's just what it is. And I think what happens is what happens in that space when we start talking about it is a lot of us, we just aren't self-aware. We just aren't self-aware. Many of us have never invested time enough to be self-aware about how the way and our ways, how it impacts others. Because we've been so accustomed to just surviving and we getting it out the mud and we doing all this, and we just create these spaces where it just continues to perpetuate dysfunction. And a lot of times the reason why we don't want to be self-aware is because being self-aware forces us to deal with ourselves. And many of us, we run from dealing with ourselves. We run from dealing with ourselves and facing that dysfunction. So we try to force everybody else around us to cater to us so that we don't have to address ourselves. And we get mad when other people like our preferences don't align with how other people are. We get mad. Man, it is what it is. That's just their preference. Your preference is not your truth. Their preference is not your truth. It's not your truth. So it is what it is. And I think a lot of times we get mad about certain things. And I don't know. I mean, and that's really boils down to maturity. And one of the things you have to look at is just because you have a preference on how you like something, right? That doesn't make it wrong, but that is how you like it. You're not the only person in the world. Other people will like things differently. Me, myself, I love to cook. I prefer not to eat mushrooms. I just don't like them. That's my preference. Now, what if I try to force that preference on everybody else? It's some people that love mushrooms. My mom is one of them. Like, you see what I'm saying? Me being self-aware to know that, hey, I don't like mushrooms, but that don't make somebody else who like them wrong. I can respect it. And that's not even really an argument. And you see how simple that is, but we make it hard because many of us don't want to be self-aware. We just try to make everybody I don't like mushrooms, so everybody else who like mushroom is wrong. No, that's a dumb and very insensitive way of approaching it. Mama said, you are correct. Sometimes we recognize the dysfunction, but we don't want to deal with us in our dysfunction. And this comes from many different things. You know, I know a lot of people don't really want to talk about it, but this comes from not being self-aware can come from a lot of things. And one of those things that can come from is a lot of people grow up and they get so conditioned to everybody catering to them because they may have been the youngest, the spoiled one. Things may be in their favor. And they don't even realize, like, you know, how they move swings and all this stuff. And they just get upset when they don't get their way. And it's like, man, when you going to grow out of it? Like, when were you just going to be a responsible adult and deal with that? Like, and honestly, like, your preference, whatever your preference is, whatever it may line up to be, your sexual preference, your preference on the type of people you like to be with, the type of food you like to eat, the type of cars or whatever, that is your right to have, and that is okay with you. But just because that's your preference doesn't mean it dictates to anybody else around you. And if you feel like that it has to, and others need to adjust to that, then you have a problem and you need to address yourself because you're not self-aware enough to respect other people. You have to. And that's a simple thing. And but when we sit down and talk about it, it's simple in the discussion, but it becomes complex when people come down to the application of it, because many people just do not want to deal with themselves. They just want everybody else to adjust around them. Hey, I'm not self enough to realize that my preference are mine and not others. One of the things that made me think about this and talk about that on the show is many of us in leadership, we have positions of authority. What happens is some of us intentionally, some of us unintentionally or subconsciously push our preferences on people to the point to where we create an environment to where anything outside of what our preference is considered wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a standard, right? But a standard shouldn't just be based off of your own desires. Because if it's based off of your desires, are you self-aware to deal with your dysfunction? Are you self-aware to deal with how flawed you are, right? Are you transparent about that? Because many of us, we hide behind our authority to try to force our preferences on other people, but not deal with the reality that maybe how I'm looking at that or how I was conditioned to view that was not the right way of looking at it. And I'll tell you, man, like this, and one of the hardest things for a lot of people to do, and one of the hardest things for a lot of people to think about is many of us were raised by people who had great intentions. And they raised us under certain principles, but a lot of their methodologies was the wrong way. Their delivery may have been wrong, but you knew they loved you and you knew they was doing what's best, but that's all they knew. So we grew up in that environment, and then we feel like, well, that's how I just got approached, where it didn't break me. Nobody said it broke you, but that didn't mean that they was lacking something in their ability to understand the delivery of it. And their methodology was maybe a little wrong. Not saying that they're wrong as people, But that's what I'm speaking on. And a lot of us, we go and that's just how I grew up. So that's how I talk to people. That's how I move. They just soft. They just don't know. Like, no, it ain't, people just ain't soft. People just don't like think that you can talk to them like they crazy. Because how the people that raised you, they talk to you in the only way that they knew. But that doesn't mean that that way was right. Like, we have to be able to look at that. I mean, and a lot of people don't, man, I'm telling you, we don't realize our ability to be self-aware on how our preferences is not others, it's just ours and not others. It can be a bridge or a conduit in which we break generational curses. And a lot of people may not understand what I mean by that, but a lot of generational curses are passed based off of people preferences. There are strongholds tied to that. And now we started getting like, why do I have to look at it this way? And a lot of us, we don't want to do it because we associate, if we question that, we are questioning the integrity of the people that came before us, and they'd be close loved ones, our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents. But I'm not saying that their intentions wasn't wrong, but a lot of things we just operate under. And sometimes we have to sit there and we have to ask those hard questions and get to the root of it. And we'll realize some people did things out of survival or out of all they knew. And now we have a better opportunity to be better, so we should do better. Man, I thank you guys so much for rocking with your boy tonight. It meant so much to me. I thank you. I look forward to the discussions. And, man, I hope everybody have a great and wonderful week because I look forward to having a great and wonderful week. And to God be the glory, and you guys have a great and blessed day. God bless. Talk to you later.